Hi and Assalamualaikum. Today my friends and I will present about different culture for international business in continent countries, which is Australia. So let me introduce myself first. My name is Nur Husna Inena Jobini Shafi'at and my metric number is 19DPM20F2009. The content of our presentation is country fact and statistic, religion and belief, language, social custom and protocol, and the last is business culture and etiquette. So I will start first for country facts and statistics of Australia. So with an area of about 7.7 million square kilometers, Australia is the sixth largest country in the world. However, with a population of only 25.7 million people, it is also one of the least populated. Australia has been inhabited by its indigenous people for thousands of years. However, the majority of its population today is of European descent. Europeans first made contact with the island as early as 1606, and the increase in colonization in the 19th century saw ethnic Europeans became the majority, as most of the indigenous population was wiped out through conflict, smallpox, and disease. The mainland of the continent was claimed by the British Empire in 1826, and inward expansion in the middle of the century resulted in the discovery of abundant natural resources such as coal, which later led to wave of migration from Asia. Australia changed its status to a British colony in 1901, the same year it implemented the White Australia policy, restricting non-white migration and strengthening ethnic European dominance in Australian politics and society. The dispute over whether Melbourne or Sydney should be named the nation's capital eventually resulted in a compromise, in which a new city, Canberra, was built specifically for the role by 1930. Australia became independent in 1931 but remains part of the British Commonwealth to this day, and fought on the side of the Allies in both World War I and World War II, in particular leaving a lasting legacy on population, economy, and foreign policy. In the second half of the 20th century, Australia became one of the world's leading industrial economies and developed strong trade ties with its Pacific neighbors and the US, while maintaining ties with its traditional partner in Europe. The White Australia policy was gradually dismantled in 1973, resulting in increased migration from other parts of the Asia-Pacific region, and the population has almost doubled since then. Today, Australia is one of the most developed countries, being among the top countries in terms of human development, GDP, and freedom. The locations of Australia is located below and south of the equator. Australia, the island continent, is bounded by the Indian Ocean to the west and Pacific Ocean in the east, south of the countries of Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, and west of New Zealand. It occupies tropical to cool temperate climates from 10 degrees south to 42 degrees south latitudes, and from 112 degrees east to 153 degrees east longitudes. From the Coral Sea and South Pacific Ocean in the north, ocean currents sweep south along the east coast, past the Great Barrier Reef into Tasman Sea, past the island of Tasmania, and into the Roaring Forties. In the southwest, the Great Southern Ocean received the barest hint of the warm currents swept into the Indian Ocean from the equatorial waters of the Timor East longitudes. From the Coral Sea and South Pacific Ocean in the north, ocean currents sweep south along the east coast, past the Great Barrier Reef into Tasman Sea. Next, the population in Australia. Statistics show the total population of Australia from 2017 to 2020 with projections up to 2027. By 2020, Australia has a total population of about 25.68 million people, while in 2022 there will be approximately 25.92 million people. Residents of Australia. Australia is among the 10 largest countries in the world in terms of area size, although its population is low compared to other countries. Not all areas of Australian land have been reclaimed and urbanized, as most Australians live in the country, metropolis, and coastal cities. The majority of Australians are of European descent and only a small minority are of Aboriginal descent. While the number of Australians has increased slowly and steadily, year-on-year population growth in Australia has recently recovered from a slight decline in 2010 and 2011, while fertility rates have stabilized over the past decade. The standard of living is relatively high in Australia, which can be seen when looking at the Human Development Index, which ranks countries according to their level of human development and standard of living, such as unemployment rate, literacy rate, or life expectancy at birth. The life expectancy of the Australian population is relatively high in international comparisons. For example, is also among the leading countries in terms of this key factor. Economically, Australia is also among the leading countries with rising employment rates and rising gross domestic product or GDP, with a steady growth rate and a relatively stable share of global GDP. The capital of Australia is Canberra, located in the ACT or the Australian Capital Territory. There are 6 states, which is Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania, South Australia, and Western Australia. The Australian Capital Territory governs itself with its own legislature. The Northern Territory, although self-administered, can still repeal its state laws by the federal government. Although New South Wales, Victoria, and Queensland are rarely referred to in an abbreviated form in everyday speech, you will often hear reference to the ACT as A, WA, and TASE. The capital of QLD or Queensland, Brisbane, can also be abbreviated to BRC. Sometimes you will also see it referred to as Brisbane. The climate in Australia is the traditional seasons are reversed to the northern hemisphere, and while there is standard business dress, it tends to comfortable and informal, unless you are button-up 3-piece suit with tie type who likes to wilt in the heat. Resort style wear and lightweight clothing is suitable for most of the year, although certain states, highlands, and desert regions can get below zero at night and during late autumn, winter, and early spring. So, the climate in Australia is, for the summer is from December to February, autumn from March to May, winter from June to August, spring from September to November. Next, the ethnic makeup of Australia is understanding the history of colonization and immigration in Australia helps to understand the current makeup of ethnic backgrounds found today. British continue to be the majority with 67.4% of the population. This is followed by other European ethnicities, Irish 8.7%, Italian, and German. Those of Chinese ethnicity represent 3.6% of the population, and the Aboriginal and Native Australian are now only 3%. Other ethnicities can also be found tough in the number, which is Indian, Greek, Dutch, and other. The other ethnicity includes individuals from many countries, particularly European and Asian. Next, the government in Australia. The Australian government, also known as the Commonwealth Government, is the state government of Australia. a federal parliamentary constitutional monarchy. Like other Westminster style system of government, the Australian government consists of three branches: the executive, which is Prime Minister, ministers, and government departments; the legislature, which is Australian Parliament, and the judiciary. The legislative branch, the federal parliament, consists of two chambers, the Dewan Rakyat and the Dewan Negara. The House of Representatives has 151 members, each representing an individual constituency of about 165,000 people. The Senate has 76 members, 12 from each of the 6 states and 2 each from Australia Inner Territory, the Australian Capital Territory and the Northern Territory. The King of Australia, now Queen Elizabeth II, is represented by the Governor-General. The Australian government, in its executive capacity, is formed by a party or coalitions with a majority in the House of Representatives, with the Prime Minister being the head of Parliament, who has the support of a majority of members in the House of Representatives. The Prime Minister is formally appointed to the role by the Governor-General. The government is based in the capital, Canberra, in the Australian Capital Territory. The headquarters of all 14 federal departments are located in Canberra, along with the Parliament. The headquarters of all 14 federal departments are located in Canberra, along with the Parliament buildings and the High Court. The judicial branch of government, headed by the Australian High Court, is independent of the legislative and executive branches and ensures that the government acts in accordance with the Constitution and the law. As a founding member of the Commonwealth and a former British colony before the Federation in 1001, the Australia Constitution was heavily influenced by the British Westminster system of government as well as the United States Constitution.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Sri Shakila binti Johari and my matrix card number is 19DPM 20F2036. For the next part, I will explain about religion and belief. Religion in Australia are diverse, with Christianity as the most widely practiced faith. Section 160 of the 1091 Australian Constitution prohibits the Commonwealth government from establishing church of interfering with religious freedom. In a choice question at the 2060 census, 52.2% of the Australian population declare some form of Christianity, around 9% less than just 5 years earlier. Historically, the percentage is much higher. Now, Australia's religious landscape is changing and diversifying. According to 2060 estimates, the distribution of religion is as follows: Protestant 23.1%, Anglican 13.3%, Uniting Church 3.7%, Presbyterian and Reformed 2.3%, Baptist 1.5%, Pentecost 1.1%, Lutheran 7%, other Protestant 5%, Roman Catholic 22.6%, other Christian 4.2%, Muslim 2.6%, Buddhist 2.4%, Orthodox 2.3%, Eastern Orthodox 2.1%, Oriental Orthodox 2%, Hindus 1.9%, others 1.3%, non 30.1%, and unspecified 9.6%. In 2016, 30.1% of Australian states no religion and another 9.6% choose not to answer the question. Other religions include Sikkim 0.5% and Judaism 0.4%. Aboriginal Australians developed the spirituality of animism from dreaming, and some of the earliest evidence on earth for religious practice among humans has been found in the archaeological records of their ancestors. The religion of the Torres Strait Islander bears a resemblance to the wider Melanesian spirituality. The general isolation of Australia's indigenous religions ended with the arrival of the first British settler in 1788, where subsequent immigrants and their descendants were mostly Christians. Although the Church of England originally held a privileged position in earlier colonial Australia, the legal framework granting religious equality evolved over the decades. A large number of Irish Catholics were transported to Australia through the British criminal. British Nonconformist Methodists, Presbyterians, Congregationalists and Baptists established their own church in the 19th century, as did Lutherans from Germany. Smaller groups also arrived and established their church. Jews began arriving in the early 19th century. The Australian gold attack brought in workers from China and the Pacific Islands, as well as specialized workers from British India, such as the mostly Muslim Afghan Khmers. Although Australia has a strong tradition of secular government, religious organizations have played an important role in public life. The Protestant and Catholic Church play important roles in the development of education, health and welfare services. Today, about a quarter of Christians attend church every week. About a quarter of all school students attend church-related schools. The Christian celebration of Easter and Christmas are public holidays. The belief of Australia is the first. Religion in Australia are diverse, with Christianity as the most widely practiced faith, and the second is Aboriginal Australians developed the spirituality of animism from dreaming, and some of the earliest evidence on earth for religious practice among humans has been found in the archaeological records of their ancestors.
Next is language of Australia. What language do people speak in Australia? With a population of more than 25 million, it's no surprise that Australia is home to a diverse collection of languages. The official language is English, but dozens of languages are spoken throughout the country, including a number of indigenous languages. How many languages are spoken in Australia? There are more than 40 languages commonly spoken in Australia. In addition to English, there are dozens of indigenous languages of Australia in common use, as well as dozens of immigrant languages. Official language of Australia. Australia has no official language. English is considered the de facto national language. However, the primary dialect in Australia is General Australian or Australian English, which differs in some ways from American and UK English in terms of spelling and grammar. According to a 2016 census, 70% of Australians speak English as the only language at home. Of the 25.3 million people in Australia, about 1 million do not speak English at all. Next, other language of Australia is, when Europeans first made contact, it was believed there were more than 400 indigenous languages in Australia. There are about 15 still in use by all age and about 110 other indigenous languages that are only spoken by older people in the communities. At the 2006 census, 52,000 indigenous Australia reported speaking an indigenous language at home. Torres Strait Island and Aboriginal language that have the most speakers in Australia today are Upper Arrernte, spoken by the Arrernte people of the Northern Territory. There are about 4,500 native speakers. Kalau Lagawia by the Torres Strait Islanders, now mostly replaced by Torres Strait Croili. There are about 1,000 native speakers. Tiwi, spoken by the Tiwi people near the northern coast. Tiwi, spoken by the Tiwi people near the northern coast. There are about 2,000 native speakers. Walpiri, spoken by the Walpiri of the Northwest Territory, about 2,300 native speakers. Next, remain and is one of the largest remaining Aboriginal Australian language, Walmatjari, spoken by the Walmatjari and related people of Western Australia. There are less than 300 native speakers remaining. Western Desert is a dialect cluster spoken by about 7,400 people in the desert areas of South Australia, Western Australia and the Northern Territory. Two Creole languages have developed in Australia since contact with Europeans: Torres Strait Creole spoken in southwest Papua and Queensland, Creole spoken in Western Australia and the Northern Territory.
My name is Siti Shaira binti Mirzanuddin. Incident number is 90 DPM 20F 2037. Social Custom and Protocol. Meeting Ethic. Australian culture is not very formal, so speech is usually relaxed and laid back. Shaking hand, smile and hello, how are you are enough. Attending a party or types of informal event, the shake hand can be displayed in brief speech. Well, Australians may say good day or good day friends. This may sound diminutive from a foreigner. Gift-giving manner. Small gifts are usually exchanged with family members, close friends, and neighbors to mark special events such as birthday, engagement, or Christmas. People who trade like sanitation workers can be given a bottle of wine or 6-pack of beer. If invited to someone's house for dinner, it's appropriate to box of chocolate, a bottle of wine or flower to your host. A bottle of quality wine is always appreciated. Eating. Australia BBQ is an integral part of Australian social culture. The most common social invitation is for a BBQ. Guests to the barbecue usually bring wine or beer for their personal use. In some cases, a very informal barbecue may suggest bring your own meat. Pay attention to your table manner. Eating is condition. Hold a fork in the left hand and a knife in the right while eating. Sure you have finished eating by placing your knife and a fork parallel on your plate with the handle facing right. Keep your elbow away from the table and your hand on the table when eating.
My name is Sarah Anissa binti Azhar. My number metric is 19 DPM 20F 2031. Business culture and ethic in Australian modesty. Like the British, Australians are modest and don't like people who big themselves or their business up. Of course, you should sell the benefit of working with your business, but you should be modest and put the fact on the table. Be friendly and passionate about what you do, but don't go in for the hard sell, as it won't work. In the same breath, remember that Australians won't necessarily shout about their success from the rooftop. Don't assume a potential client isn't successful because they're not wearing an expensive Rolex or showing off about how much they're making. For straightforward nature, in terms of business, Australians are very blunt and to the point and don't want to spend months chatting before they buy or sell to you. This is both a blessing and a curse, as it means you can enter quick and fruitful partnership, but it also means that you have to be prepared for rejection. If you're trying too hard to sell or you're frustrating by contacting them too often, they just won't be interested. For slower decision making, the Australian business scene is diverse and ever-changing, but one thing is for certain, they take time when it comes to making decisions. Exercise some patience and don't try to push sales, as you will only turn off a potential buyer. For networking, whilst Australia are less inclined to attend in-less networking meeting and catch up before they work with another company, you should still put in the effort to impress. Before you do, make sure you understand the ethic. Be informal. Australians are very formal, so be relaxed and casual when you are greeting a potential client or business partner. However, just because they might say good day to you, that doesn't mean you should use the phrase back. especially if you're not from the country. Stick to a polite hello and follow with standard English terms. Talk about the right stuff. If you're making small talk, then stick to the thing like the weather, sport, and pop culture, and avoid things such as religion and politics to stay on the safe side. Be polite. Make sure that you arrive early when you're meeting an Australian and follow Australian working culture. You shouldn't assume that because a contact has invited you out for a catch-up that they want to talk about business. So let them make the first move and take it in turns to buy a round of drinks. And lastly, dress smart. Just because Australians are more relaxed, that doesn't mean you need to dress down. Stick to suit or a smart dress and bring along a business card too.